In 2024, a team of scientists switched off every light on their submersible and waited in complete darkness, 4,000 meters below the surface of the Pacific Ocean. What they measured next should not have been possible. Oxygen levels were rising around them, not falling, rising. In a place where sunlight has never existed, where no plant has ever grown, where photosynthesis has never happened once in the entire history of Earth, something down there was making air. And for 2 years, nobody could agree on what it was or what it means for how we understand life itself. You have probably heard that all the oxygen you breathe comes from plants, from trees, from algae, from the green film on the ocean's surface, soaking up sunlight and splitting water into breathable air. That has been one of the most basic facts in biology for over a century. It is also, it turns out, incomplete. This story starts in a stretch of the Pacific Ocean most people have never heard of, called the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. It sits in international waters between Hawaii and Mexico, and it covers an area roughly the size of the continental United States. Nobody lives there. Nobody sails through it for pleasure. The only reason anyone goes there at all is what lies on the sea floor, 4 kilometers down, in permanent cold and permanent dark. Scattered across the bottom of this zone are trillions of small metallic lumps, roughly the size of a potato, sitting loose on the mud like a field of black stones. Scientists call them polymetallic nodules. Mining companies call them the future. Each nodule formed over millions of years, as dissolved metal in seawater slowly crystallized around a tiny fragment of shell or shark tooth or bone, layer by layer, the way a pearl forms inside an oyster. Inside them is manganese, nickel, cobalt, and copper, the exact metals needed to build electric car batteries and wind turbines. The growth rate alone is enough to make you feel small. A typical nodule adds roughly the width of a human hair to its surface every million years. Most of the nodules scattered across that seafloor today started forming before the first modern humans existed, and they will still be sitting there, largely unchanged, long after every one of us is gone. By some estimates, the Clarion-Clipperton Zone alone holds more cobalt and nickel than every land-based reserve on Earth combined. For an industry racing to build batteries for electric vehicles and renewable energy storage, that number is almost impossible to ignore. Instead of digging through rainforest or displacing communities near land-based mines, companies argued they could simply vacuum these loose metal nodules off an empty seafloor where, as far as anyone knew, almost nothing lived anyway. That argument depended entirely on one assumption: that the abyssal plain really was empty. Which is why, for the past decade, mining companies and marine scientists have been racing each other to the bottom of the ocean. One side wants to harvest the nodules before anyone can stop them. The other wants to understand what actually lives among them first, before that seafloor is gone. That second group is where this story begins. In 2013, a marine ecologist named Andrew Sweetman was running a routine experiment on the seafloor of the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. His team had sealed a chamber over a patch of sediment, full of nodules, and left sensors inside to track oxygen levels over several days. The setup was simple: seal the chamber, measure how fast the oxygen inside disappears. Marine organisms breathe after all, and breathing consumes oxygen. In total darkness, with no photosynthesis to replace it, oxygen should only ever go down. Sweetman expected a slow, steady decline. Instead, the oxygen went up. He assumed it was a broken sensor. Faulty equipment fails constantly on deep-sea missions, and an impossible reading is usually the first sign something has gone wrong, not the first sign of a discovery. He recalibrated everything and sent the equipment back down. The oxygen went up again. For nearly a decade, Sweetman kept getting the same anomalous result and kept assuming it was a mistake he had not found yet. It took years of repeated testing across multiple missions and multiple independent teams before he was willing to say publicly what the data had been telling him the entire time. In July of 2024, his team published their findings in the journal Nature Geoscience. The polymetallic nodules themselves, the same metallic lumps that mining companies wanted to dredge up by the millions of tons, appeared to be splitting seawater into oxygen and hydrogen, without sunlight, without life, through a process that had never been documented on the ocean floor before. They called it dark oxygen. Here is the mechanism they proposed, and why it is stranger than it sounds. Each nodule is essentially a natural battery. As different metals settled into its layers over millions of years, they created tiny differences in electrical charge across the surface of the rock, the same basic principle that makes a battery in your phone work. Sweetman's team measured voltages on individual nodules reaching almost 1 volt. That number matters, because splitting a water molecule into oxygen and hydrogen through electrolysis normally requires about 1.5 volts. A single nodule falls short, but the nodules do not sit alone. They cluster together on the sea floor by the trillions, packed close enough that their tiny electrical fields could, in theory, combine. If enough nodules cluster together, their combined voltage could cross the threshold needed to electrolyze the seawater around them, split it, produce oxygen, all without a single living cell involved. Rocks, generating breathable air through nothing but their own mineral chemistry. To understand how strange that really is, it helps to go back roughly 2.4 billion years to an event geologists call the Great Oxidation Event. Before that point, Earth's atmosphere had almost no free oxygen at all. Then cyanobacteria, some of the earliest life on the planet, began performing photosynthesis at a massive scale, and oxygen started building up in the air and oceans for the first time in Earth's history. For nearly every other form of life alive at that moment, oxygen was not a gift, it was a poison. Most of the microorganisms on early Earth had evolved in an oxygen-free world, and this new gas was chemically destructive to them, tearing apart the molecules their cells depended on. Scientists sometimes call what followed the oxygen catastrophe, one of the largest extinction events in the planet's history, caused not by an asteroid or a volcano, but by the accidental byproduct of a new kind of life learning to breathe sunlight. That event is the entire reason you can breathe today. It is also the reason biology has spent the last century treating oxygen as almost synonymous with life itself, since every documented pathway that produces it in large quantities traces back to some form of photosynthesis, somewhere, at some point in Earth's history. Dark oxygen suggests there may have always been a second pathway running quietly in parallel, one that never needed a single living cell to get started. Not every scientist accepted this immediately, and the disagreement that followed is worth understanding because it shows you how real science actually works. It is rarely one clean discovery. It is usually years of people trying to break each other's results. Critics pointed out that Sweetman's sealed chambers might have trapped and killed small deep-sea organisms inside them, and that a body breaking down chemically can sometimes release oxygen as a byproduct, not proof of an unknown mineral process at all. Other researchers questioned whether the voltage readings were accurate, or whether contamination from the ship's own equipment could explain the anomaly. Some of the loudest skepticism came from scientists with direct ties to the mining industry, which made the debate harder to untangle. Was the science being questioned because the methodology genuinely had holes in it, or because the conclusion threatened a multi-billion-dollar industry that badly needed the seafloor to be lifeless? Sweetman himself pushed back on that framing, but acknowledged that the scrutiny, whatever its motivation, was forcing his team to run a far more rigorous set of experiments than they might have otherwise. Sweetman's team ran the tests again. New chambers, new locations, different equipment, built specifically to rule out contamination. The oxygen kept rising. By 2025, several independent laboratories had reproduced versions of the effect on collected nodules in controlled conditions, measuring the same faint electrical activity Sweetman first found by accident more than a decade earlier. The debate is not entirely settled. Some marine geochemists remain skeptical of the exact mechanism, but the core observation, oxygen appearing in total darkness at the bottom of the ocean, has now survived years of attempts to disprove it. And that observation created a much bigger problem than anyone expected, one that has almost nothing to do with oceanography. For the deep-sea mining industry, dark oxygen was a disaster. Companies had spent years and hundreds of millions of dollars preparing to extract these nodules at industrial scale, using the argument that the deep abyssal plain is essentially a lifeless desert, valuable for its minerals and nothing else. If the nodules themselves are quietly generating the oxygen that sustains life on the seafloor around them, then mining them does not just disturb an ecosystem. It could be removing the very mechanism keeping that ecosystem alive in the first place. The International Seabed Authority, the United Nations body responsible for regulating mining in international waters, had already granted exploration contracts across large sections of the Clarion-Clipperton Zone before this discovery became public. Environmental groups seized on Sweetman's findings almost immediately, using them to argue for a pause on deep-sea mining until the science is better understood. Deep-sea ecologists, who had spent years cataloging life in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, much of it never seen before by human eyes, had already been warning that the region held far more biodiversity than mining companies like to admit. Surveys of the area have turned up thousands of species new to science, from ghostly sea cucumbers to sponges shaped like glass harps, most of them living directly on or around the very nodules now scheduled for extraction. Dark oxygen gave those warnings a new dimension entirely. It was no longer only a question of which creatures might be crushed by mining equipment. It became a question of whether the equipment itself might be switching off the seafloor's own quiet oxygen supply. Whether that argument succeeds is still an open question, and the politics around it have only gotten messier since. In 2025, facing years of slow-moving international negotiations at the Seabed Authority, the United States moved to fast-track its own permitting process for companies willing to mine in international waters, bypassing the very body most of the world relies on to regulate the seafloor. Other nations called the move a violation of international law. The companies involved called it long overdue. Caught in the middle of all of it are the nodules themselves, sitting exactly where they have sat for millions of years, quietly doing something no regulator, no mining executive, taxes mining as Estas's mining and contivence, and no marine biologist fully understood until 2024. None of that, on its own, would explain why NASA started paying close attention. To understand why a space agency cares about oxygen levels in a Pacific Ocean trench, you need to go back to a much older problem in astrobiology, the search for life beyond Earth. For most of the 20th century, the search for alien life followed a simple rule, sometimes called the habitable zone. Find a planet at the right distance from its star, not too hot, not too cold, where liquid water could exist on the surface. Earth is the only confirmed example. Mars might have been one, billions of years ago, before it lost its atmosphere. But over the past 2 decades, that rule quietly stopped being the only one that mattered. Scientists studying Jupiter and Saturn's moons found something the habitable zone model never accounted for. Europa, one of Jupiter's largest moons, is covered in a shell of ice, but underneath that ice sits a liquid ocean, kept warm not by sunlight, which barely reaches that far from the sun, but by the constant gravitational flexing of Jupiter's immense pull. That same ocean may hold more liquid water than every ocean on Earth combined. Enceladus, a much smaller moon orbiting Saturn, does something even stranger. It shoots plumes of water vapor directly into space through cracks in its icy surface, plumes that spacecraft have already flown through and sampled. Those plumes contain salts, organic molecules, and hints of hydrothermal activity happening on the ocean floor beneath the ice. NASA's Cassini spacecraft flew directly through one of those plumes in 2015, close enough to taste it, and what it found included silica grains that, on Earth, only form one way, through hot water reacting with rock on a seafloor, exactly the kind of hydrothermal activity that powers ecosystems in Earth's own deep ocean. A little further out, Saturn's largest moon, Titan, adds a stranger possibility still. With lakes and rivers of liquid methane on its surface, and a suspected liquid water ocean of its own, hidden underneath a thick, icy shell. 3 moons, 3 hidden oceans, none of them anywhere near a habitable zone as the old definition understood it. Neither moon gets meaningful sunlight. Neither could support anything resembling plant life or photosynthesis as we understand it on Earth. And for decades, that was treated as a fatal problem for the idea that either one could host life at all. Then scientists looked closer at Earth's own deep ocean and found the loophole. In 1977, researchers exploring the seafloor near the Galapagos Islands discovered something that should not have existed, according to the biology textbooks of the time. Around cracks in the ocean floor called hydrothermal vents, where mineral-rich water superheated by magma below pours into the freezing deep ocean, they found thriving colonies of tube worms, crabs, and bacteria. No sunlight reached any of it. No photosynthesis was happening anywhere nearby. Instead, bacteria at the base of that ecosystem had evolved a different trick entirely, called chemosynthesis. Extracting energy directly from the chemical reactions between the vent's mineral-rich water and the surrounding ocean. Life, it turned out, did not need sunlight at all. It only needed a chemical gradient to feed on. Earth kept handing scientists more proof of the same idea, in places nobody expected to find any life at all. Beneath 4 kilometers of solid Antarctic ice sits Lake Vostok, a body of liquid water that has been completely sealed off from sunlight, from the atmosphere, from the rest of the planet, for over 15 million years. When researchers finally drilled close enough to sample water near it, they found signs of microbial life that had been surviving in total isolation the entire time, cut off from every energy source except the chemistry of the rock and water around it. If life could survive that long under Antarctic ice, with nothing but mineral chemistry to sustain it, then a moon with an entire ocean sealed beneath its own ice shell stopped looking like a stretch of imagination. It started looking like a scaled-up version of something Earth had already proven was possible. That single discovery rewrote the rules for where life could exist anywhere in the universe. If chemosynthesis alone could support a full ecosystem in the crushing dark of Earth's ocean floor, then Europa's subsurface ocean, warmed by tidal flexing instead of starlight, suddenly looked far less impossible. Enceladus, with its own hydrothermal activity hidden under miles of ice, looked less impossible too. This is the exact reason NASA has spent the last several years sending robotic vehicles into Earth's deepest, darkest trenches, not to study Earth for its own sake, but to rehearse for missions that will not launch for years. One of those vehicles is called Orpheus, an autonomous underwater robot built through a partnership between NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. Orpheus has been lowered into some of the most extreme trenches on the planet, including the Kermadec Trench near New Zealand and the Puerto Rico Trench in the Atlantic, descending to depths beyond 6,000 meters, operating without a tether, without real-time human control, making its own decisions about where to go and what to sample. That autonomy is the entire point. A robot exploring the ocean beneath Europa's ice will be so far from Earth that a single radio signal takes over 40 minutes to arrive one way. There will be no joystick, no live camera feed to react to. Whatever machine eventually descends through that ice will have to think for itself, the same way Orpheus has been learning to think for itself in the black water of the Mariana Trench. Engineers on the Orpheus program have said plainly that every dive is treated as a rehearsal, not for exploring Earth, but for a mission that has not launched yet, to a moon 390 million miles away, where the margin for error will be measured in a spacecraft's entire remaining lifespan, not a single failed attempt. Which brings the story back to the nodules at the bottom of the Pacific and why dark oxygen changed the conversation inside NASA's own astrobiology division. Before 2024, the working assumption was that any oxygen found in an alien ocean would almost certainly be a sign of life, since on Earth, oxygen is famously a biosignature, a chemical fingerprint that something living produced it. Photosynthesis is responsible for nearly all the free oxygen in Earth's atmosphere and oceans. Dark oxygen broke that assumption completely. If simple mineral chemistry, a rock sitting in salt water with no biology involved at all, can generate oxygen on its own, then finding oxygen in an alien ocean is no longer automatic proof of life. It might just be geology. That sounds, at first, like disappointing news for anyone hoping to find life beyond Earth. It actually points in the opposite direction. If oceanic minerals can generate oxygen through nothing but their own electrochemistry, then Europa's ocean floor and Enceladus's do not need photosynthesis or even chemosynthetic bacteria to have an oxygen-rich environment. The chemistry could be doing it alone, quietly, for billions of years, building exactly the kind of oxidizing conditions that more complex life would need to eventually take hold. The same way it may have happened in Earth's own deep past, long before the first true photosynthetic organisms ever existed. In other words, dark oxygen may not be evidence of life. It may be evidence of the conditions life needs before it can even begin. NASA's Europa Clipper mission, launched in October of 2024, just months after Sweetman's paper was published, is now carrying instruments specifically designed to measure the chemistry of Europa's ice and its subsurface ocean when it arrives in the early 2030s. Scientists on that mission have publicly acknowledged that findings like dark oxygen are reshaping how they plan to interpret whatever the spacecraft eventually detects. There is one more piece to this, closer to home than Europa or Enceladus, and stranger for it. Mars once had oceans of its own, billions of years ago, before it lost most of its atmosphere and the water either froze underground or escaped into space entirely. If mineral electrochemistry can generate oxygen at the bottom of an ocean today, there is no obvious reason it could not have done the same thing in ancient Martian seas, long before anyone knows whether life ever took hold there. Every rover NASA has sent to Mars has been hunting for chemical signatures that might once have supported life. Dark oxygen quietly adds a new item to that checklist, a process that requires no biology at all, yet produces exactly the kind of chemistry astrobiologists have spent decades treating as a hopeful sign. A discovery made by accident in a mining survey most people will never hear about, from a chamber sealed over a field of ordinary-looking metal rocks, is now shaping how humanity searches for life on a moon 400 million miles away, and rewriting what scientists look for in the ancient rocks of a planet right next door. There is a strange kind of symmetry hiding inside this story, and it is worth sitting with for a moment. We have sent spacecraft to map nearly every square meter of the surface of Mars. We have photographed the far side of the moon in detail sharp enough to count boulders. And yet, more than 80% of Earth's own ocean floor, the one beneath our own feet, remains unmapped, unexplored, and largely unexplained. The nodules in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone sat on the seafloor for millions of years before anyone noticed they might be doing something no rock was ever supposed to do. There is no reason to assume they are the only secret still waiting down there. Somewhere in that 80% of ocean we have not yet mapped, in trenches deeper than Everest is tall, under pressure that would crush a submarine like a soda can. There may be other processes just as strange as this one, quietly running, completely unnoticed, for longer than humans have existed as a species. For over 100 years, the story we told ourselves was simple. Life makes air. Air makes more life. It was a closed loop, clean and self-contained, and it worked well enough that almost nobody thought to question the first link in that chain. Then, a marine ecologist sealed a chamber over some ordinary-looking rocks, expecting nothing, and found a crack running straight through an assumption that had gone unquestioned since before Darwin. We built machines to search for the origins of life on moons hundreds of millions of miles from here. And the reason we know where to point them and what to look for when we get there keeps turning out to be something we found by looking down, not up. Maybe the ocean was never the opposite of space. Maybe it was always the closest thing to it we already had, sitting beneath our own feet the entire time. waiting for someone to turn off the lights and actually look. If this changed how you think about your own ocean, you already know what to do next. Subscribe, and I will keep bringing you back to the places we understand the least.